In this episode, we'll discuss hidden inflammation. Imagine this: you're leaving the gas on all day. Hidden inflammation is the match. All right. So, we're going to discuss how to test for it, lab tests. We're going to discuss what to do about it in this episode. So, join me because this is critical to your health. All right, let's get started. What is hidden inflammation? Now, there's good inflammation, there's bad inflammation. Inflammation isn't always bad. Good inflammation, if we have a bacterial infection, we need inflammation to counteract it. Our body basically charges up the immune system, everything. We get a cut, we need inflammation to basically come in and heal the wound. Okay. So inflammation is good. Inflammation is very good if we get it. We need it, of course, and it leaves our body. But there's this question of the hidden inflammation that's chronic, that stays. Now, this inflammation causes, amongst other things, diabetes, dementia, gives us the heart attack, gives us the stroke, gives us just kills us in the end. People can be healthy with high cholesterol, but throw in inflammation and it's devastating. We talked about the heart, we talked about the vessels, cardiovascular disease, and we talked about looking at ApoB, looking at the LDL, the bad LDL. Now, that in itself doesn't do anything to the body, but combine that with inflammation and you start getting deposits, you start getting calcium filled arteries, you start getting things that will lead to a heart attack, lead to stroke, lead to dementia, lead to Alzheimer's, and more. So we're going to discuss this because it's hidden. We really have to look and test for it. Okay, so right off the bat, what are the tests? Okay, let me go through. We want a lab test for C-reactive protein. We want a lab test for erythrocyte and sedimentation rate, which is ESR. We want a blood test for HOMA IR, and that is basically detecting insulin resistance before it happens. So it's a newer test, but it's very important. The other ones are PCT, which is from the thyroid. And if we have a bacterial infection that keeps going, this gets produced and upregulated in the thyroid and other tissues of the body. So we want to see that's down. And plasma viscosity, PV. But the most important ones are C-reactive protein, HOMA IR. So that's your lab test. This is where you're going to see, okay, do I have an issue with this? Now, again, I'm going to go brief because I know I don't have a lot of attention span on your end. So we're going to quickly go through what to do about it. We all have some part of it, but this is the thing that drives disease in our body. So we have to keep it down. What do we start with? I think first off, we start with episode 1, 2, and 3, gut biome. We need to have a healthy gut biome because this is where our immune system gets regulated. This is where certain key amino acids get formed. This is everything happens. It's our barrier to the junk we eat, the junk we digest. This is the barrier. This barrier needs to be super well maintained. How do we maintain this barrier? By maintaining the gut biome. The gut biome, if we go through an antibiotic cure, if we're taking medications, everything, our gut biome is dead. If we're eating ultra processed foods, we're killing our gut biome. If we're doing alcohol, it's killing our gut biome. How do we protect our gut biome? First of all, we need to start with some pre and probiotics, really to help our gut biome regain homeostasis. After that, on the long term, we need to include in our diet fermented foods, kimchi, sauerkraut, etc. You can look it up, whole list of fermented foods. Then we need to up our, and it goes in this sequence. Then we need to up our fiber, and this needs to be constant. We need to up our fiber intake, and we can take fiber supplement for that. And we can also make sure that we're eating enough to maintain, and legumes, of course, beans and stuff, to maintain the fiber high. We need to have high fiber in our diet. This is really looking at preventing disease, lowering inflammation. So the gut is really where it all starts. We need to protect this. Secondly, we'll go into, and this is going quick. I want you to go back to that episode if you need to want, if you want to learn more, if you want to see more, if you want to dive deeper into it. But for brevity's sakes, I'm going to go through 9 things that really affect the hidden inflammation, which are critical to our health. So the second one is nutrition. We need to cut out starches. We need to cut out sugar, ultra processed foods. All this increases our inflammation, hidden inflammation, because it goes into visceral fat, and alcohol also plays a part here, because you get basically fatty liver disease. You got formation of fat around the organs in your body. Hugely. This is the dangerous fat. We have a whole episode on visceral fats. This is super dangerous. So nutrition plays a role in here. And really what we're seeing is dementia, heart disease, uh, insulin, cardiovascular disease, and insulin resistance. These are just 3 that I'm throwing out there. The second one we're looking at is the mitochondrial health. Okay, now we know if we overeat, what happens. And I have an episode on this where the mitochondria can't basically, and mitochondria again are the batteries of our cells. They keep us alive. This is where we get our energy from. ATP is produced in the mitochondria. If we overeat, the mitochondria gets overloaded. When it gets overloaded, we have a couple of things happening. One, we produce ROS, okay, the reactive oxygen species. This basically goes into oxidative stress. Oxidative stress basically puts inflammation into our body. Okay, so we're going to have to look at not overeating. This is a big one, and keeping our mitochondria as healthy as possible. And this means, again, going back to exercise, going back to cardiovascular health, and VO2 max. So this is the part of the mitochondria that we need to really look at. So we have to do some exercise. It means zone 2 exercise, zone 5 exercise, and weight training, so that we can really get the extra glucose in our blood into our biggest sink, which is our muscles. Okay, so that's the mitochondria. The other things that we look at, I think the next most important thing is sleep. Yes, sleep. We need at least 7 to 8 hours of sleep. We need to basically manage our circadian rhythm, which means light. Direct light in our eyes is key in the morning, first thing, direct light. And we need to manage our sleep. We need to have quality and quantity of sleep. And I have a whole chapter or episode on sleep. It is super important. Why? Because in sleep is where we get rid of the bad protein. Basically, it's like the garbage truck coming in. Okay? And we need that to come in because we have bad protein. We need to basically fix our DNA. We need to fix our memory, our brain health. Everything depends on quality and quantity sleep. And we need to have this. This is key. This in itself will cause chronic inflammation if this is off. So this is a big one. The other one is stress, chronic stress. Okay. So when we look at chronic stress, it creates insulin sensitivity, inflammation response, the genes that turn on inflammation, suppress immunity. Everything starts reacting on each other. Okay. And this again, overweight, belly fat. So the stress can cause the overweight, can cause increase in belly fat. So we have to manage this stress. You have to first see, is my stress short term? Well, that's an easy fix. Psychological side. Is it middle term stress? We need to do cold plunging. We need to do something to manage that middle term stress, which means projects, home, something that is stressing us out, but that will finish at some point. And then there's long term stress. we need to seek professional help. This is key. We need to look at having a practice of meditation or prayer, something to basically calm us down and reduce that stress. Also, exercise. And we're going to go into that a little further. What type of exercise reduces stress the most? Okay. If that is one of the issues you're dealing with, then we come to overweight and obesity. Overweight and obesity in itself, these extra fat cells, cause inflammation. They are inflammatory, they are metabolically active. So we have to drop our weight. We have to drop our weight. Now, that's not an easy thing. And we're going to have multiple episodes on weight loss and obesity and overweight and being overweight because it is detrimental, first of all, and it is very nuanced. It's what's your genetic background? There's Asians and East Asians that look skinny but are actually obese because their muscle to fat ratio is completely off. They have very small muscles. The Europeans are more. So the European, like when we look at the BMI, this is an index a lot of doctors will use. It's not that accurate, but it's for public health sake, it's what we use. Okay. A better way of doing it is either doing a DEXA scan, or the best way is an MRI to look at your visceral fat and to really determine how much visceral fat you have, how much you have to lose. But when we're just eyeing a person, it is very hard. Is he European? Is he Asian? Is this person Latin, which means they're shorter, which means they get influenced way quicker by their weight than the rest of us? Is this person African American? Is it a female African American or is it a male African American? This all changes. People hold fat in different ways, and culturally, it's just different. Genetically, it's different. So we have to look at that and look at it individually. But at the same time, we need to look at muscle mass, which is critical. The muscle mass will tell us if someone has a lot of muscle mass, if someone has a lot of muscle and he has fat on top of it, it is less destructive. Okay. But if the muscle mass is low and there's fat, even if there's a little fat, it can be detrimental. This is what we got to look at. What's next? We're doing the overweight and obesity. And then we have anxiety, fear and anxiety, which cause depression. Now, depression, fear, anxiety, depression, we're seeing that this causes inflammation. So we really need to manage this. Now, a couple of studies came out of fear and anxiety, and they did this with students that were getting ready for tests or different tests. And they looked at, okay, how do we specifically do fear and anxiety? How do we lower that? How do we mitigate that? And what was found is that they put a group on moderate exercise, which is like zone two, 3 times a week, half an hour. And they put a group on high intensity exercise, like, more athletic, more, pushing the boundaries. What we see, and also in the Olympics, we see this when people are doing exercise at a competitive level, their stress actually goes up. And so inflammation goes up. Yes. Is it good? Yes. If you're at that level and you do that, do it. But know that. Secondly, for someone that is really focused on reducing inflammation and really focused on fear and anxiety, that's one of the things that plays a big role. They really have to look at moderate intense exercise because this showed the greatest decrease in fear and anxiety and the biomarkers that for inflammation in that case. So really looking at if that's your thing, if fear and anxiety play a role in your life, moderate exercise is the way to go. Secondly, cool, we're already at 7 or 8, time restricted feeding. Now, this is really what we need. Time restricted feeding is key. And I go 7 hours. Pick your 7 hours. Make sure it's 3 to 4 hours before you sleep, but you can pick it, you can move it. Okay. Restricted feeding means that we're unfed for a lot of hours. And when we're unfed for a lot of hours, when we're just drinking tea, coffee, no sugar, water with a bit of lemon, maybe, we give our body a chance to clear the bad protein, to do the kind of the homework, clean house. And we need that. If we're fed all day, we're not giving our body a chance, which basically causes low grade inflammation to continue. So we need to do this. We need to have the time restricted feeding. And not only that, but it basically reduces your calorie intake and brings you to a better weight. All in all, it's the way to go. So restricted feeding, time restricted feeding is huge. We've seen with time restricted feeding that we get a 20, on research has shown 20% decrease in A1C, and which is the hemoglobin. This is critical for pre-diabetics. It's critical. Time restricted feeding is a must that we have to incorporate here. Again, we go back to the basics. We go back to the longevity 7. The other one is, who are you hanging out with? Who's your tribe? Where do you get your support from? This has a big influence because it influences our daily, how we feel about ourselves, how we feel about our community, this all can induce stress. So our tribe becomes something that we have to focus on. We have to have a positive tribes. We have to have a community tribe. We can go into groups. We've shown in research that working in groups with patients has a huge benefit because, again, we drop the inflammation. We drop the inflammation. There's something about connecting with people every day. There's something about connecting with your tribe, knowing that you're just supported, that decreases inflammation. And inflammation is key. So when we look at inflammation and we see what it can cause as far as cardiovascular disease, as far as diabetes, as far as dementia, and this is mentioning a couple of things, but it causes everything. It's part of aging. It accelerates aging in our body, aging in our brain. This is one we have to really be careful of. And it's unseen, it's undetected most of the time. If you're not paying attention, you will not notice it. So it's something that we have to work on. And like I said, when you're getting cardiovascular disease, it takes about 20 years to develop. It takes about 20 years to develop real buildup in the arteries and everything. In those 20 years, what's causing the buildup? Yes, it's ApoB, high LDL, bad LDLs, etc. But what makes them stick? What makes them stick to the walls? What makes them build up? Inflammation, low-grade inflammation. And we know also that the mitochondria, which is the fuel cells, the fuel factories of our cells, with low-grade inflammation cannot function correctly. So it has huge effects on our biology. And this is what I wanted to bring. And this is where I wanted to help you get started with this. I need you to check it. I need you to go to your longevity 9 and check all the marks. Where am I lacking? What do I need to do? And when you do your blood test, you know what to do, right? C-reactive protein, ESR, PCT, PV, HOMA IR. These need to be included so you know where you stand. I hope this episode helps you and helps you, friends, and someone you care and love. Send it through. Let's grow this channel. Thank you very much, and see you next time.